And I would always hope people would walk up and chat with me, and I find people very fun to talk to. Yesterday at the restaurant we went to for dinner, lunch, whatever you want to call it, which was a California Pizza Kitchen, there was a gentleman who was the regional sort of chef. He was sort of supervisory chef, and he, I want to say his name was Azebriel. It was a really cool name. He was talking about how he used to be a private chef for a number of sports individuals, and the kind of things they would like and what it was like to cook for them. And there's just so much to learn from people if you take a moment to stand there and talk with them. I remember probably a month or two ago, I met a gentleman who lives in the same complex as I do, who has two dogs similar to mine. He has a yellow lab and a black lab, and I have black lab and yellow lab mixes. And he is a clothing designer. His clothing design, by the way, if you're curious, is Forever Loyal Apparel. Another thing I'll try and put a link to if I remember in the video, because he had some great shirts on there that I noticed. The two that stood out to me was one that was like a royal blue shirt that said blessed, which I believe there are a lot of blessings in the world, and we should show gratitude. Gratitude's another great shirt to have too, but he didn't have it on his site. But I mean, just blessed or gratitude, grateful, whatever would be a great shirt. And then the other shirt he had that stood out to me was one that said faith over fear, which I absolutely believe is essential. So there was some great shirts there. There's a number of designs that people might find interesting. So check them out on foreverloyalapparel.com. Like I said, if I remember, I'll put the link in the description. And what else was sort of going through my mind yesterday? Oh, heard some funny things about in the news about the politics, which was, if you are not familiar with the person, there's a lady who's a congresswoman person, or you just identify her, out of New York, named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and she made a little bit of a slip in one of her comments this last week, where she said that Republicans were responsible for FDR not being reelected. Well, it's true that the Republicans were in charge of the Congress that pushed for the 22nd Amendment, which said that a person could not run for president or not be president more than 2 terms, nor could they be. So if a person took over and became president in the midst of another one's term, so if a vice president took over for the president more than 2 years before the term was to expire, they could only run for president one more time. So they couldn't hold essentially a 10-year term at length. They could at best have like a 9.5-year term or something, because they could run if they only had a 1.5 years left during the president's term and they took over, the vice president that is, then he could run for president the next time and the time after that. But if he had more than 2 years that he assumed that position for, he could not run for the presidency 2 more times. independently. He would have to just, at best, have like a 6-year term combined. So, but anyways, it's true that the Republicans pushed that through Congress, the 22nd Amendment matter. But it happened in 47, and FDR died in 45. So I think that's exactly what they said. It says he died. He died in 45. It was at 47. Let's see. What's that magical thing over here? Let's see here. Let's learn something together. When did FDR die?
Franklin Delano Roosevelt died April 12, 1945, at age 63.
Yeah, he died in 1945, April 12th, 1945. So it went through the 22nd Amendment was done. Matter was done in 47, pushed by Republicans in Congress, which had no impact on FDR because he was gone. And it wasn't ratified until 51, I think they said. So that's sometimes Congressman, Congresswoman, Congressperson Cortez does herself a disservice by letting her passionate political ideology overstep facts of the circumstances. And I don't think she's the only politician that does that. So don't get me wrong. But she's in a phase right now of her youth where the last thing she needs to benefit herself going forward in politics is to misstate facts that's just going to follow her and really hurt her more than help her long term. What kind of time we're working with here? Let's see. Wow. I have been talking a long time. Sorry, it says 37 minutes. Anyway, it means I've been going for the better part of 22 minutes right now, which is fine. But is there anything else? I was kind of having a conversation with my buddy about Congressperson Cortez. He's a very big supporter of the Liberal Party, which I am not a big supporter of many things in the Liberal Party. But he talked about how she had good ideas. Well, she may have fantastic visionary ideas, but they're not practical ideas. There's things that can be done and cannot be done. And the Green New Deal that she is the mother of in design, if you haven't looked, there were a number of budget sort of reviews of that. And at one point they said that it would cost approximately $93 trillion to actively make what she wanted to happen. And there was no guarantee it would be sustainable, but just to make it happen and get it started and complete it the way she's visualized it cost $93 trillion. Well, keep in mind our budget every year is like $3 trillion. So we have a $22 trillion debt right now in the United States, which means that essentially you're talking about quadrupling almost and a half. No, more, quadrupling and a quarter our debt from what it is right now, which is already affecting us because we have a lot of debt to China and other parts of the world. So essentially they could come in and say, well, we own everything. So we would never get to 93 trillion because no one would float us that kind of money. It's kind of like there was a scene in Austin Powers. Was it part 2? Was it part 2 where he travels through time? Yeah, I think it was part 2 where he travels through time, and he goes back to the 60s, and he decides to, blackmail the world leaders to give him money. And this was back, in the 60s, and our debt wasn't nearly as high, and it was just a different, time. So Dr. Evil tells the president, I'm going to destroy the world unless you give me $1 billion. And the president, and everybody looks at him and they just start laughing. And the president says, Dr. Evil, $1 billion, that's absurd. That kind of money doesn't even really exist. You might as well be asking for like a gazillion or Brazilian or $1 billion. And so that's kind of where that Green New Deal falls, because if you think anyone's going to have that kind of money to float the United States that's even in existence, is there even 93 trillion in overall money in existence in the world? I mean, if we have a $22 trillion debt, what's the budget of other countries? Are we the highest budgeted country in the world? If we are at $4 trillion a year, then all these other countries couldn't nearly be that high, and there's not that many other countries that are as wealthy as we are, quote unquote. So do you think $93 trillion even exists? Which means that if you're going to produce that much, every dollar you mint out and manufacture lessens the value of every other dollar around it. It's kind of like sports cards. If Michael Jordan's cards weren't more rare, if they were all over the place, they wouldn't be worth as much. The originals are worth, sometimes I think one's worth like $1 million something at least. And I don't know a lot about Michael Jordan, but the point is that it's worth so much because of its rarity. That's the same way with the dollar. The less you have of it, the more it's worth. And if you start building up, and if there was 6 million Michael Jordan cards out there, Michael Jordan cards wouldn't be worth anything. Now, reprints are a different thing, but original prints are where the value is. And the same thing goes with dollars, and dollars doesn't work quite the same as cards, because a dollar made in 1947 has more value than a dollar made today. But essentially, if you were to walk into a store and you didn't know the rarity of the 1940 dollar compared to a 2019 dollar, it would just be a dollar. Its value is to the collector, but only because it's rare, right? There's fewer 1947 dollars rolling around. So anyway, how did I get on that topic? Oh, I was talking about Congressperson Cortez's Green New Deal concept. So just consider that 93 trillion probably doesn't even exist. And while she may have some, very lovely Gene Roddenberry concept ideas about the future, there's a practicality that doesn't meet muster with that. Anyways, let's see what time we're looking at. Well, 31 minutes. Better roll. Have a great day. Talk to strangers. Just don't get in their car, all right? Be good to yourself. God bless. See ya.